Welcome back to Nonprofit Marketing Bootcamp, all digital, all doable. I'm Beth Hammock, your bootcamp trainer. My team and I support leaders like you who want to maximize your marketing and communications resources, expand your reach, and raise more money. Today, we're talking influencer marketing, and I am super excited to welcome one of the world's top experts on the topic, Neal Schaffer. Neal is the author of The Age of Influence, The Power of Influencers to Elevate Your Brand. He is an influencer himself and speaks internationally, hosts a popular podcast, and advises major corporations on their digital marketing. Neal also coaches marketers, entrepreneurs, and business owners in his Digital First Mastermind group, of which I am a grateful member. Neal, welcome to Nonprofit Marketing Bootcamp.
Thank you so much, Beth. Thank you for that kind introduction, and it's an honor to be here.
Let's jump right in, and I'd like you to explain briefly what influencer marketing is. People might not know that, and why it's so important.
Yeah, I think from a nonprofit perspective, influencer marketing is something that you've probably always been doing without understanding it. For instance, when you want to bring in a board member that has influence in the community, you're probably picking and choosing that board member to invite to your nonprofit board. For instance, that is a type of influencer marketing that's using sort of traditional offline influence, but more and more these days that influence is online. And I think if you have children and you ask them who influences them, you'll hear people that you've probably never heard of before because they are very big on TikTok, on Instagram, or on YouTube. I would argue even business professionals, baby boomers, Gen Xers, we are also influenced by a lot of different things than we would have 20, 30 years ago when there were only, believe it or not, 3 major TV stations. Before cable TV was big, we used to listen to the radio for our news, and we religiously read newspapers, which we actually paid to subscribe to paper editions for. So the world has changed, and all of that traditional media influence has been traded into or translated into things that we see when we do a Google search, or things that sort of pop into our LinkedIn feed, or maybe a podcast that we listen to. So there's just more people influencing more people today. And as a nonprofit, there are a lot of different powerful ways to tap into it. And I also want to say on the flip side, it's a story I like to share with nonprofit executives when I meet them, because when I did a presentation to one of the big 5 pharma companies and I had 30 brand managers in the room, I went through all of digital and social media marketing. The one concept that they thought had the biggest potential for them was influencer marketing. You might be thinking, pharmaceutical brands, influencer marketing, a lot of regulations, I don't get it. Well, when I told them, if you think about it, if you want to tap into communities that might need your pharmaceuticals, those communities are often, organized by nonprofits. So the key to influencer marketing for pharmaceutical brands is to collaborate with nonprofits. And it's something that a lot of them have been doing in the past, but now it's time to translate that digitally. So I just want to, seed the plant, or plant the seed, I should say, that it all comes down to who do you want to influence and who are the people that can help influence that community you want to tap into. There's offline things that I think nonprofits have traditionally been really good at, but there's new ways to do it online digitally. And when you do it digitally, you can do it throughout your city, your county, the state, country, nationwide, international. And that's really the exciting thing for me about influencer marketing and digital marketing in general for nonprofits.
Definitely. So if you want to have a regional or national reach, that's how you do it. Instead of just being like, I'm here in St. Louis, it would be, you can really expand to the whole Midwest, perhaps would be a start.
Yeah, and this is where you sort of, once you start to do things nationwide, you look at your analytics, you might find there's certain areas of the country where your voice is being heard, and you're sort of picking up more traction. And maybe it's like, okay, well, for whatever reason, Boise, Idaho is a hotspot. Maybe we reach out to local influencers in Boise and see what we might be able to do together. So you sort of map all the data and the channels together to create a strategy.
So I've noticed that it's around the holidays right now, and St. Jude's Hospital is advertising a lot, and their influencers are the patients, or the success stories of their patients. So those are influencers, correct? I mean, I think that what comes to mind before I went there was donors, like how, do you want to have people who give money to the organization being a spokesperson? That would be one thing. But what do you think? Who should, like, if I were a nonprofit executive, what would be a good way to find influencers? And I guess the first step is figuring out who your best bet is.
Yeah, so let's take a step back. So Beth, since you read The Age of Influence, and it's more of a for-profit, uh, you know, marketing that I talk about in the book, but it's translated very, very well in the nonprofit. So with a for-profit company, it's all about reaching out to people that have influence, but also have some brand affinity for you. And who has brand affinity for you? Your employees, your partners, and your customers. In the case of nonprofits, your customers are the people that actually receive the benefits of your nonprofit. And they are the ones who know, like, and trust you the best. In fact, they love you. And they also have the most compelling stories to tell, just like real customers that actually buy real products from real companies and talk about them in an authentic way carry way more weight than someone who has paid a lot of money because they have a lot of followers, but they've never used the product, right? It's all about authenticity. So I think really it begins with who have you helped? And, I work, for instance, part of the demographics I work with are real estate agents. Well, when you close on a house, why aren't you taking a picture together with the people that you helped? Big smiley faces, just sold, handshake in front of a beautiful home. That speaks way more than a just sold, graphic on Instagram. Real people, real experiences, real customers, authenticity. So, that's really where I begin. If you're a startup nonprofit, I think it's a little bit harder. You may need to incite some word of mouth, and we can talk about that separately. But I would definitely start with who in the community have you already helped, and can you tap into their stories? Uh, I think from a donor perspective as well, that's what really triggers the emotions, that the reality, that authenticity of that. So you don't want to do it in a marketing way. I mean, you want to let people tell their own stories, and maybe it's related to your nonprofit, maybe part of it isn't, but it's all about storytelling and really finding ways to engage and connect with your audience. And who better to do that than the people that you've already helped?
Definitely. At universities, we have students doing that. So it's exactly what you're saying. And so I'm glad that you brought this up because it's real people. It doesn't have to be a celebrity. I mean, that's what comes to mind when I think of an influencer, like there's a lot of influencers who are celebrities, of course, but uh,
Yeah, and it's
it's
funny. I just went on a college tour yesterday with my two children, junior and freshman in high school. Went to Pomona University, a very fine school. And they basically had someone speaking, but they also showed a video. The video included clips of different students that narrated different parts of their experience, right? Video was very, very professionally done, but the audio was raw and very, very authentic. Now, they could have chosen anybody, but they chose actual students. I mean, they've had like a Nobel Prize, award-winning alumni who we learn about later, but they chose average students. They did choose students from different parts of the country, and they did say, as part of our efforts for diversity, they make sure that every one of the 50 states is represented. So one of the people who spoke in the video is from Rhode Island, but this is a way that you have your culture and you're selective as to who you're choosing so that it aligns with your culture in an authentic way. And I think that every nonprofit has their own unique culture. It's trying to find what those elements are and who in the people that you already know, the people that you've helped, and people you don't know that you can tap into to create those connections that help with brand alignment, but they also help with that emotional connection as well.
That's great. Yeah, good to hear. I'm glad you had a good experience there. Get a lot of ideas, I'm sure. So
Absolutely.
yeah, one of the things that I learned in the Age of Influence, that was something I hadn't really thought about a lot, is that when you find somebody who you think will be a good influencer, that you don't just, it's not a one-off. Like you want to have, repeated messages with this person. Can you tell me more about that, please?
Yeah, I call that sending social signals. And this is a mistake a lot of companies make. So you're a nonprofit and you want to tap into really active social media users in your community. Maybe you run a nonprofit like a food bank. So maybe you start following the foodies in your community that are very active on social media posting about food, and they understand the joys of food. And maybe simply, maybe if we can convert one out of these 10 or 15 very popular people to talking about our nonprofit, we can really make impact, because these are people that all they do is talk about food, and all the people that follow them are interested in food, and it's primarily local based. So this is just one example, right? So I would not just go out to that person, send them a DM or direct message in social media slang, and
Yeah.
say, hey, we're a nonprofit representing, we help people that have, critical needs to eat, to feed them. And we see you love food. You surely would understand our mission. And maybe they would, but a better way of doing it would be first to actually follow them, actually engage with their content, right? Right now, being able to show up in the notifications of a social media user is almost like being on the front page of the New York Times. Because 30 years ago, the first thing we do when we wake up in the morning was look at the front page of a newspaper. Now we're often looking, or younger people are often looking at the notifications in their social media channels. So show up. And when you show up on a regular basis, you'll get noticed. And maybe some of these people will check out your food baking without you asking. But try as much to build a relationship over social media, using those social media tools of like, comment, follow in an authentic way. And I think if you were to do this for 10 people over the course of 1 month, you're going to see very different results. You're going to see maybe one or two of them say, thank you so much, really cool work that your nonprofit's doing. 5 of them may not even respond to any of your comments. And that's fine, right? But of those 10, you're going to find 1 or 2 seem to resonate more. And those would be the people that I'd reach out to and say, hey, thank you so much for appreciating my comment. We're obviously passionate about food. We appreciate food like foodies do. And that's why we want to help people appreciate food that can't afford it, right? And we'd love to work together with you and maybe some restaurants to help make this a reality. What do you think? Something like that. I mean, it's funny because brands are trying to humanize themselves. The best way to humanize your nonprofit is to actually be human, is to use social media like a human would and communicate the same way that a human would. And I think the nonprofits it's easier for you to do this because you're not trying to make a profit off people, right? So use that to your advantage and really try to develop real, genuine relationships with people. And that'll go a long way in social media.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the humanization. I worked at a nonprofit where people wanted to communicate with their own social media profiles with the volunteers, and they didn't want to use their own, they made separate social media profiles for work, which, can you talk about that? Was, I mean, and I know not to do that, of course. And what, have you ever dealt with that before? And what was, what's the solution?
Yeah. So ideally, we want people who volunteer for us to tell the world that it becomes an integral part of their social media profile. And I think companies are the exact same. They want employees who work for them to tell the world that they're an employee. But the reality is, not every volunteer wants to mention it. Now, if volunteers don't want to mention the fact that they're a volunteer for your organization in their profile, I sort of wonder about their commitment to your organization. My daughter is on the board for Assistance League here in Irvine, California. And she's really proud of it, brings it up, on her Common App. It's going to be one of the top things she mentions. And I think that's sort of the spirit that you want all of your volunteers to have, that they have a sense of pride of working for you. And therefore, I think asking them to, mention it on their profile is something that you should do, right? It's an okay thing to ask and say, hey, really appreciate your volunteer. You can be digitally volunteering for us 24/7 just by putting the fact on your profile. And if you don't want to put it on your Facebook or Instagram, we get it, but just putting it on your LinkedIn profile can really help us, right? And I wouldn't expect everyone to do it. And anyone who does it, I would thank them for doing it. I'd try to, I don't know how you can incentivize them as a nonprofit, but try to really appreciate them, maybe a special year-end party. And really, you're trying to create what brands are trying to create, which are brand advocates. You want to create a brand advocate for your nonprofit. So them having a separate profile has no value.
No,
because you're not reaching out. Yeah, you're not reaching out to their community. The only way to reach out to their network is if you're an integral part of their profile.
And what about the actual employees? I mean, you mentioned employees being ambassadors. Is that they're not, how can they do that? How do employees engage?
Yeah, so I'll give you a really, really good example. I did I have a podcast, right? Your Digital Marketing Coach podcast. And one of my recent episodes was with an interview with a business development manager at ClickBank. This is an affiliate marketing company. But he, Kyle Kacheka, actually runs their podcast. So the podcast isn't run by an executive and it's not outsourced. It's run by a normal guy. But the normal guy has a lot of hands-on experience. Just like a lot of the normal volunteers are facing the people in need, have a lot of hands-on experience, right? He is the face of the brand, to the point where I saw the other day ClickBank posted a video and it was of Kyle talking. It wasn't some like corporate video or like the executives. So it's really about letting people represent your brand, letting people show up. And I think that a lot of nonprofits might be used to doing this in sort of like glossy magazines and annual reports. Well, they'll show pictures of people, but it's really allowing them to do so in your social media, representing your brand. In fact, they are your brand. Those people on the front line that are helping people on behalf of your, they are the brand, right? The people that actually touch the end user. I'd say the salespeople, the customer service reps. We will judge Starbucks not by how much advertising they spent, not by their executive board, but by the people probably earning minimum wage or slightly over that are serving us that day, right? And it's the same thing. So I think the more that you can equip them with becoming really, really big fans of your nonprofit, and give them a voice to share, and maybe set up a way of allowing them to share. This then is, well, what is the mechanism? How do we get them to participate in our social media? I know this is a B2B marketing company, but they created a Google Voice number and said, hey, anytime you want to say something, you want to put it in just share a thought about your experience today, working in the field or helping out people, just leave a message. And they'll basically transcribe that into a graphic and they'll put the person's, photo. So
Wow.
They're basically creating content on behalf of people.
Yeah.
Which is great because people don't have time to do that. So there's a lot of ways of working them in, but it's really about realizing just social media is a different beast. And when we talk about, influencer marketing, it's not just you trying to tap into influencers. It's also about your nonprofit becoming more influential online in your community. And there's no better way to do that than to allow your brand, your people to speak up and have so many different voices speaking up about you in social media.
So if I'm the executive director of a small nonprofit, do I get on there and share personally, or do I do that on my own page, or how does that work?
I do both. I mean, you started the nonprofit for a reason. You're very passionate about a cause. You should be sharing that story, right? I would share it with my personal connections. I find often that sometimes my business posts, and Beth, maybe you found the same, we think, oh, LinkedIn is for business. But sometimes when we share our business successes on Facebook, our friends are, they're over the moon happy for us, as they should be. And you get just tons of engagement. So yeah, I would say if you're the founder, you'd be wanting to talk about it in your personal profile because it does define who you are. And yes, you are one of the representatives. And I think if you want your employees and your volunteers to represent your brand on social media, it starts with you at the top. Once you show that you can do it, there's no excuse for everybody else not to do it.
Yeah.
It's a very common tactic with corporations as well. Well, the CEO, the board's not doing it. Why should I do it? But when the CEO is out there every day live streaming, then you have no excuse not to be live streamed, for instance. That's a little extreme. But.
Well, I mean, hey, it is that giving season right now. They might be doing that. Giving Tuesday is coming up. So, well, this is such good information. I've always been interested in getting celebrities. So like a lot of people. And when I worked with Girl Scouts, we had a young movie star who Mackenzie Hanchachek, she's a Girl Scout, and she made a little testimonial for us, which was wonderful. But if you're going to go looking for somebody like that, I mean, how do you do it? And should we expect that we might have to pay them? I mean, people are paid all the time.
So there's I was looking in the index of my books. There was actually a nonprofit that was funded, I believe, by Kaiser Permanente. It was a case study that didn't make my book. And I'd forgotten whether it made the book or not. But basically, Kaiser Permanente, I believe, was the hospital. They started a nonprofit just about like healthy living. And there was a case study of how they worked with influencers who were aligned with that mission. They didn't pay them at all. It was complete free publicity. So I think when we look at it that way, it comes down to the alignment, that relevance. Like, what is it that your nonprofit stands for? And who are the people that would naturally want to volunteer, want to help. I think that people genuinely have a heart for nonprofits, and I've lived around the world and traveled around the world. The United States is a very special place. Not every society donates to charity for the way that Americans do. For instance, it's very American.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think there's a lot of people who, if they see alignment, if they see that you stand for the same cause, they would love to help you if they found out about you. So it's really about what is that cause, who are those people, and how can you begin engaging with them and give them a voice. And here's where the more influential your nonprofit is, the more beneficial. Because if you're reaching out to, we call them nano influencers. They have between 1 to 10,000 followers on Instagram. And you're reaching out to them and saying, hey, we'd love to feature you on our account. Can we shoot a 60-second video with you where you give advice around our cause? And hopefully they share that with their audience as well. Say you only have 500 followers versus if you have 10,000 followers. The bigger community you have, the more influencers will actually want to collaborate with you because they see that they're going to get more influence for their contribution. So if I'm a nonprofit, I really want to become more influential. I want to become the influencer in my space. And it's really interesting. One of my friends from Amherst College ended up creating her own nonprofit. And I've helped her nonprofit on several occasions. And there were some newcomers that came out of nowhere that built their influence out of Instagram. I mean, their website, very little on Facebook, but they were able to tap into a younger generation and become quite influential starting with that. And all they did was they posted stories of their constituents, of the people that they've helped. Every single post was a video of someone talking. This is a diabetes related nonprofit. So they were working with a large number of people nationwide that they could tap into. But that's sort of the power, the potential when you yourself can yield more influence in social media. It's going to allow for more doors to open up and you'll be seen by more.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, people, there's like with educational institutions, you see a lot of pictures of their beautiful buildings and they don't have people in them. It's just like, every time I see that.
I worked on as the marketing representative on the board of one nonprofit here in Southern California. And when we had our annual executive board meeting, they were all talking about, well, we need those college students to get out there and knock on doors and try to get more interest in our nonprofit. And I'm thinking, we need college students to publish on social media about our nonprofit and share the word in that way. It's a misuse of invaluable resource. Or, just get them to create really cool content for us. Get them to create like Instagram reels and TikToks that we can't do. And I know that a lot of the executives are listening saying, I'm not trying to target high schoolers that are on TikTok, but I tell you that all of these social networks over time, 10 years ago, if I would have told you Facebook was an old person social network, you would have laughed at me, right? Well, who's laughing at who now?
Yeah.
Or as my daughter would say, it's a boomers network. But, Instagram also is getting older. And believe it or not, TikTok will go through the same transition. We're already seeing more people in their 20s, not just high school students on TikTok. So these are just new ways of communicating, new social networks. And I think if your nonprofit wants to remain relevant, it's really important that you tap into this power of youth and get that support and get that content and really build connections.
Yeah, I mean, in every nonprofit, every business wants to have younger people engaged. I mean, so a lot of nonprofits have these young professionals boards or what have you to try to raise up the next generation, but it would be a lot more effective to have the people online engaged, because it's hard to get people to come to those young professionals boards. Has been my experience. So, you could do some of both, of course, but have gatherings and meet in person now that we can do that. But yeah,
absolutely.
I like your advice to just grow your own social presence too, which is what we both do with digital marketing, and that people, that's where you start because people want to support something excellent. So
yeah, and if you were to reach out to someone, they look at your nonprofit, you have 100 followers versus 1,000 followers. It's just social proof, right? Psychologically, that nonprofit with 100 followers may be serving way more people than a nonprofit with 1,000 followers. But if someone's never heard of your nonprofit, they're going to judge you by that number. Unfortunately, it's just human psychology. And that's why I think it's really important that you understand that. And you don't just, well, we'll just let an intern run our social media. You think about it a little bit more strategically because it really is your public face. Younger generations will not go to your website. They're going to first check out your social media profile. Hint, hint. So it's something I'd really look at differently. This is not 10 years ago when we were trying to figure this all out. It's pretty clear the influence that social media has today.
Yeah. No, I worked at a major university when Facebook first came out, and I kept saying, we need to have this. And now they have like tens of thousands, Boku followers. Yeah. And then the next place I went, I started the Facebook page. Yeah, I was there. It's grown. It's crazy, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. There was one of
all
my
good.
favorite musicians from Japan. She never had a Facebook page. I literally networked to meet with the president of her management company and was offering as a fan to basically create her Facebook fan page for free because it's something, there are all these fake ones out there anyway. But yeah, I think that really tapping into a generation, people that are very active on social media is going to unlock a lot of ideas, a lot of content creation opportunities. It's gonna unlock a lot of locks and doors. So yeah, I hope that everybody listening will want to invest more into it and take it a little bit more strategically and seriously and do wonderful things, because people need to find out about your cause, and they're not going to find out about you if you're not on social media.
Yeah, and they also, this is how they will get engaged, not just for giving money or volunteering, but if they have whatever they need whatever you offer, obviously you want to engage people that way too. So that's important too. You meet
Absolutely.
every goal. In other words, it will support the goals. Yeah. So I think, this has been a really good conversation, Neal, and appreciate everything you do, and want to encourage people to get your book and read it, and follow your podcast, Your Digital Marketing Coach, a lively conversation. How often do you put those up? Twice a week? Is that right?
It's actually weekly, but I was a little behind because I was
Oh,
overseas for a few weeks. So yeah, they're twice. It'll get back to my weekly cadence in December,
it's
promise.
twice a week right now, huh? I noticed. No, that's
Yeah, I'm
good.
pumping them out. But yeah, normally and this is a great way to end it, is that you don't have to be doing this every day. I find if especially like startup nonprofits, if you could just get into a habit of posting something on a weekly basis, but engaging on a daily basis, that alone is going to help you tremendously. So you don't have to be like tied to your iPhone and, oh, I need to post 10 times a day. We're not, you can do it very, very moderately and still have impact.
So you're saying engaging would be commenting on other people's posts, sharing posts, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. In fact, if I was to create a digital engagement plan for you, publishing is only part of it. It's like, you know, I've written a few books, right? 20% of a book is writing it, 80% is promoting it. Maybe the same thing with social media. 20% is your own content, 80% is engaging on other people's contents, I think is a way to think about it.
And that you also talk about that in the book too, as far as finding influencers by engaging in their content, and building
Absolutely.
relationships before you call them up and say, hey, I'd like you to make a video for us or whatever, and before you
Yeah,
DM them, that is.
absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm going to close it out here, and I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I'll be back soon with more of Nonprofit Marketing Bootcamp, all digital, all doable. Thanks. Bye-bye.